Oh, wait a minute. This is yours? Yes. Oh, this is mine then. Okay. Maybe this is mine, right? This is mine. Oh, that's yours. Okay. No, I got one from her. So you can have that. ¿Por qué no te dice con la mía?
And your name is?
Oh,
Stacy, let me
it's
say
a garbage
something.
can. So
You
yeah.
need a garbage can? Okay.
I just threw this away.
There's amazing studies that were done today on the effectiveness of different forms of counseling. Okay? So CBT or affirmation counseling or narrative therapy or reality therapy. So there's a lot of studies. And here's something that's been consistently shown. The amount of change that occurs in the counselee is not determined by the method of counseling, but by the empathic connection between the counselor and the person. And to have a empathic connection, you can no longer stand at an objective distance and analyze. You have to be able to step into the moment using your own experience as a way of understanding what people are going through. That's the reason in 1974 or 5, Henry Nouwen, who himself was a psychologist, coined the term wounded healer. And he said the best healers are wounded healers. So when I do this seminar, Stacey, I have to tell people on the front end, I think I've been there, they know this is true. You're going to get opened up when you listen to what I'm going to say. It's just going to happen. So you need to find a way to have somebody walk with you, but don't disqualify yourself because you do have issues. Because who doesn't? And this is what I say to students all the time, trying to make it silly but let them get it. I say this, I got stuff. Bad stuff. You got stuff. All God's children got stuff. And so if we disqualified ourselves because we had stuff, nobody would say anything. But we're wounded healers. Now, before I go on and take your question or comment, I do want to do this. I want you to introduce my dear wife, Cheryl. She's here with me. She always is gracious to travel with me. Sherry and I had our first date on December 31st, 1967. That's a while, isn't it? And I heard someone say, where did we meet earlier? And we couldn't help but meet because she was my next door neighbor. So I wanted to introduce Sherry and Cheryl. Her name is Cheryl. I call her Sherry. It's a pet name for Cheryl. So I wanted to introduce her. You were making a comment or a question.
I think that almost part of everybody's stuff is thinking that we're the only ones that have stuff.
Absolutely.
Everybody else has it together.
Yeah. Do you know, Sharon, that, again, a lot of research has been done on vulnerability in the context of a local church. And what most people find is a lot of people in the local church feel very alone there. And the reason they feel alone is because of a heavy emphasis on performance. Good Christians perform this way. And so when they lay out what the standard of performance is, you look at yourself and go, what? I can't do that, so I better not mention, because I'm the only one here that struggles with. But the unfortunate thing is, many people in the church are struggling with it too, and now we're trying to open that up. I often tell this little story as a metaphor, this true story. We used to run a retreat center in Northern California for broken people, and it was right up beneath the Lassen volcano, beautiful, beautiful snow-capped mountain year-round, and at the bottom of the mountain is a mirror lake. And we take the people there for several days at the time they were here, and there were ducks there, and then the clients would love to, throw food to the ducks. But what was interesting is there was this one duck that had a twisted beak. Literally, its beak didn't like this; it was like this. Okay. And whenever they would throw food in the water, before the old ducks would grab the food, they'd bite that twisted beak duck and get him away, and then they'd get the food. Okay. Bite him, get him out of here with the food. Well, all these broken people, guess which duck they fell in love with? This duck. So by the time they were done, they could coax that ducks right up onto their blanket and keep. So I was looking at that one day after I'd seen this many times, and I went, oh my word, this is a metaphor of God. And then I said this to myself, and I've been spending most of my life with a false beak on so nobody could see that I got a twisted beak. So I decided, what the heck, I don't care, and I took my, and I'm like this, and all of a sudden I saw people crying and they went like this. And pretty soon, I'm ministering with a whole lot of people with twisted beaks.
Yes.
Oh, okay. That's what has to happen in the life of the church. But because it's so performance-driven, we do what? And one of the things, I work with a lot of pastors. By the way, I was on that point. So far, in our seminars and training, I have trained just under 5,000 people in this modality of care. Doctors, nurses, psychiatrists, psychologists, pastors, and so forth. But one of the things I find among pastors when I meet with them are a couple things that are very serious. One is, a lot of pastors have built up ungrieved loss. A lot of loss that they've never been able to grieve because Christians don't do that. Okay. Also, a real fear of vulnerability because they're afraid they'll be disqualified if they get vulnerable. You get that, right? It's like, I can't share that I have struggles. You don't even have to tell what the struggles are. Some pastors give you the impression they have no struggles. And those are the ones that have usually lots of struggles. So I'm trying to help people understand that the best healing comes when we recognize it's a level playing field. We all have stuff. God's working on mine. He can use mine to work on yours. The church should be filled with people sitting there with bandages on. Not cosmetics. And you do know the definition of cosmetic. Cosmos means, it's a Greek word that means the ordering of chaos. So what is a cosmetic? Something that attempts to order chaos. I don't mean that in terms of makeup. I saw you. Oh my gosh. No, I'm not meaning that. But we hide behind a cosmetic. Okay. Now, when I went to a psychiatric hospital, after all the things that God let me accomplish, I can tell you, I experienced some serious rejection. I mean, from a lot of people. And some of my colleagues said, don't tell anybody you were in the psychiatric hospital, will ruin your ministry. Well, how do you not tell? So I told. And it made my ministry. Yeah. You know that more people come to me now than used to come. You follow that? You know, I used to say that before I, went nuts and had the papers to prove it, okay, I'd walk into somewhere to speak and they would say, he's written this and he's done that, and he serves on this and he serves on that, and I'd kind of be sitting there with this kind of, I'm about to speak to you. Now I walk into a room and I'm introduced often in a very totally different way. This is the guy that went crazy. And he met Jesus there. And guess what? People go, I want to hear what he's saying. Yes. See, where before it was pretentious. And this gets back to the issue, Sharon, that you're mentioning, is it's such an unsafe place. But why don't we follow the Bible? Because how were broken people known in the Bible? They were known by their brokenness. Yes. Even after the brokenness had been taken care of. Now just think of it. I'm going to introduce you to some people today. I have 4 guest speakers for us today. The first is the woman caught in adultery. A wife would go, Harold, cover your eyes. It's like, what would she be like? Well, she slink into the room. In will come this beautiful, poor, pure, wonderful woman, and you'll go, what's the adultery thing? She's been known for 2,000 years as the woman caught in adultery. Yeah. Why? Because what was her worst thing became her best thing. And what was the worst thing about her became the best thing about her. Blind Bartimaeus, Simon the leper, Gadarene demoniac. He hasn't been a demoniac for 2,000 years. Shouldn't we call him Bill or Howard or Harold? We call him the Gadarene demoniac. Why? Because every one of those people could say this: what was my worst thing has become my best thing, because that's where I met him in a way I've never known him before. if the church could grab this, we would stop performing and would be able to say, I met him when I was feeling depressed. I met him in the midst of an emotional affair. I met him in agoraphobia, and everybody else would say this. I have half of the equation. I've got the depression. Can I beat him? So that's what I'm trying to promote by talking about this issue. Okay, now, here's a question that I want to address. I'm addressing it in general terms. Why is it that two people can go through the same thing and it messes one up and doesn't mess the other one up? Have you ever seen that?
Yes.
Even within a family. It's amazing. You know, one daughter says, my parents were straight from the pits of hell. And the other said, no, no. They were the greatest saints I've ever known. And you look at them and go, what's going on here? Well, there's a lot of things, but I want you to go over this list with me. Why do people, what impacts the degree to which people get messed up? You ready? One is, at what stage were they developmentally? Okay? If you're hurt when you're little, and you're not raised in a secure environment, it has a deep impact on you. Do you know that today, Robert Naborsky has proven that it's not the big adult traumas that do the most damage to your life, it's the little traumas that occurred when you were young. Because those are the ones that set you up for the big ones later on. And if you didn't have a resource to deal with them when you're little, it can be a serious issue when you're older. And are you aware that most people minimize childhood trauma?
Yes.
When you're an adult, you even hate the little part of you that experienced that trauma. We try to reject that part of ourselves. But that's where the wound really lies, in the developmental stage. Number two, a person's temperament does impact the way they handle stress. Now let me explain that. An introvert and an extrovert gain energy by two different ways. An extrovert gets energy by being with people, talking, interrelating. An introvert gains energy by being alone. Unfortunately, their conversations are all within themselves. In general terms, extroverts have a better resource than introverts do to deal with life stress. Why? Because the mind is what? An embodied and relational processing system. And what do extroverts do? Relate. You see, they pull in others. Now here's another thing that's a factor. Whether you're an internal or external processor, how do you process things? Okay? Now, an internal processor is a person that when trying to figure something out, they figure it out all inside themselves. And then what they come out with is their conclusion. You got it? There's no dialogue. They think about it, they get all the ramifications, and then they come out. This is what I have to deal with it. That is not the way an external processor works. They start in Ethiopia to arrive in Cleveland. I mean, what I'm trying to say is their conversation starts way out here, and you have trouble even following them. You know, when I've been counseling external processors or something like this. I've come to you today, and my ankle's really hurting me, and I've noticed that it's created some real tension in my calf, and my thighs are aching. My grandmother had aching thighs. My grandmother actually moved to the United States in 1879, having been raised in Heidelberg, Germany. And interestingly, she married her stepbrother. Now, they weren't actually related, but she married her stepbrother.
Yeah.
Okay. And what they did was, after living in Germany for 10 years, they migrated to the United States, and they came through Ellis. Are you getting what I'm saying here? You're going, what? Where in that? You know, and then they'll go all the way through it, and pretty soon they're talking, my back hurts a lot, and I have this neck ache, and it's a lot like, Francis reminded me, my husband gets a neck ache. Does your husband ever get a neck ache? My husband gets a neck ache a lot. And I've been wondering about pillows. I wonder if I would change the pillows, that would help my husband. And then they go to this, and I have a migraine headache. Okay. So here's what I do. Okay, and I say this. All right, let's talk about your ankle. And this is what they say. My
it.